I want to introduce you to Humayun Kabir, Bangladeshi diplomat, former ambassador of Bangladesh to the United Nations. Shafqat Rabi joins us, Bangladeshi columnist and political analyst. We've got Subir Bhaumik. Subir has been BBC's former bureau chief and is an author. We've got Professor Ayanjit Sen, international affairs expert. And from the Indian perspective, we've got Ambassador Rajiv Dogra, former chief counsel to Pakistan and an author. I want to go across to our foreign affairs editor Geeta Mohan first on this dialogue that's currently on at the Hindon Air Base between Ajit Doval, India's national security advisor, and Sheikh Hasina, who's just landed in the capital. What's Delhi telling Sheikh Hasina at this time? What does Sheikh Hasina want to do? What do we know?
Well, Rahul, for one, the conversations are also about being apprised of what really happened, what transpired in Bangladesh, and how did the situation come to such a pass. We do know that the National Security Advisor has been in touch with the mission, as also the establishment there, in ensuring and monitoring what's happening on the ground. But things took a real volatile turn this morning, and we've seen Sheikh Hasina now having left the country. The conversations were with regards to what now from here on for not just Sheikh Hasina, who in all probability would be headed to London with her sister Sheikh Rehana, but also for the future of Awami League. For us, for India, Rahul, not having Awami League at the helm of affairs in Bangladesh could really mean a lot of security concerns at the border between India and Bangladesh. Should there be a BNP, Jamaat-e-Islami combine in Dhaka yet again, we will be seeing a lot of trouble. So while the West might have wanted Sheikh Hasina out, there's a heavy price, heavy cost of getting Sheikh Hasina out of power.
Okay, Geeta Mohan, thank you for joining us. I want to go across to Humayun Kabir, Bangladeshi diplomat, former ambassador of Bangladesh to the United States. Ambassador Kabir, can you explain to those who are watching, who have been following the protests that have been happening over the last several days in Bangladesh, and wondering what is it about today that led to the complete collapse of the Sheikh Hasina government, that ultimately led to Sheikh Hasina having to flee Dhaka?
Well, thank you very much for having me on your show. Well, I would say that the protest movement started as a non-political quota issue movement. The students were demanding a decision on the quota issue. But at that time, I think the government was not too much interested to listen to, sometimes ridiculed, and basically on 15th, I think 14th or 15th, Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina made a comment that was really not liked by the students. They understood that she was meaning to say that they were Razakars and stuff like that, which is a very derogatory word in Bangladesh, and they rose up in furor. And the following
But she did agree to ultimately reduce the quota substantially. The courts also stepped in. Why then, despite that acceptance, did the protest not subside?
The court decision came after almost more than 200 deaths throughout the country. So that complicated the matter, because by then, when the court was deciding, by then a new issue came up. For example, students were demanding that the accountability should be fixed on those why the students had to die, and so on and so forth. And some of the deaths were really, I would say, too vivid to forget, or people took them too seriously. So by the time the court gave the decision, that it was overtaken by the killing of around 200 students and other people as well. So by that time, actually, the momentum moved out of the quota system. And even then, what really was of concern was that instead of taking softer approach, the Chhatra League or the Awami League and the student wing went for the harder version. And that really created the problem. And yesterday, as you have already known by now, more than 100 people died throughout the country. And that really inflamed the situation. And we have been seeing for the last few days that it's not only students, people from different walks of life joined the students, and it was taking the shape of a mass revolution or uprising. And
Okay, Shafkat Rabi, we've seen the General Waqar-ul-Zaman, the Chief of Army Staff, says he's taken over. From what I gather, the students say that those who led the protests must rule, that the army can't just come in. How do you see the situation play out from here? Will the army govern? Will the protesters accept the army rule completely? Or do you think these protests can go on in some form and shape?
Thank you for bringing me in here. I do not really think the protesters will come back in the same manner like they did before, now that their demand has been met. But the ball is in the court of the Army General. So he has to listen to the kids. These are kids we are talking about, teenagers and 20-year-olds. As long as he listens to them, listens to their central demand. This is a apolitical group of young people who kicked out the longest serving and the most dominant prime minister in South Asia's history. Bunch of kids kicked her out, so that this General Walker has to listen to them. If he fails to do that, we
what
do
do
not
these
know whether
students
the
want
kids
now?
will be back on the
Their
street or
demand
not.
has been accepted. Shafkat, what do the students want now? Because the reservation quota that Sheikh Hasina was bringing, which was so vociferously opposed by these students. Can you also explain to our viewers why were they so disturbed by those quotas, and why were they completely unwilling to accept them?
Well, you mean why did Hasina did not accept it? Hasina did not accept it because of habitual behaviors of a dictator. Dictators always think if I agree to one demand, I have to agree to 20 other demands. So their reflexive reaction is that I'm not going to agree. So that's what Hasina did. But then the quota movement was basically just one element of the frustration that these kids had, because these are kids in their 16 to 20 years of age. They never seen democracy. They have never seen election. The only thing they saw is a prime minister who only talks about her family and her father. So they were frustrated. The quota movement saw that all the jobs were going to the cronies, the fake freedom fighters, depriving these poorer kids who are from the outskirts of Bangladesh. So there was a lot of grievances that they had.
So what will be
there
the
was
role of the
no other
BNP
avenue
Jamaat from here, the opposition parties in Bangladesh? What role are they likely to have if the army steps in to govern?
I think the immediate demand from all the parties will be restoration of democracy and an election at some point. That is going to be the most
Has the
logical
army
and the
chief
most likely
indicated anything
demand.
at all about when elections might be held?
I would say that's too early to talk right now, because these guys do not even know who is going to be the advisors as of now.
So what happens to Sheikh Hasina's party if she's not there? Because she doesn't have a clear line of succession from what I gather. Does the party still hold together?
I cannot comment too much about the party, but the student wing of the party, Chhatra League, which was used as a paramilitary division of the Awami League with arms and ammunition, I have very bleak forecast about that entity surviving the scrutiny of time. The most likely scenario would be that student wing will probably be abolished in Bangladesh at some
Subir
point.
Bhaumik, what implications does this crisis have for the India-Bangladesh border? You know, I know that our military assets, our air assets are on a state of readiness. That's of course as a precaution. But what implications do you think this has for the India-Bangladesh border?
Well, I would, well, I would imagine we should not hide this threat factor. What happens to India-Bangladesh border? This essentially is a protest movement within Bangladesh, and with very justified reasons. I agree with my old friend Humayun Kabir that there was a time when this could have been sorted out. In 2018 there were student protests against quotas, and the government did say that we will abolish quotas. Then there was some case, and the judgment of the case, restored the quotas. So at some point, when it all started, Sheikh Hasina could have easily told these people that it's not my government's decision, it's the court, but we will appeal in a higher court, which she finally did. And she got, the appeal done in Supreme Court. So why didn't she say something like this 15 or 20 days back? So I agree with my friend Humayun Kabir that, if you lose time, it doesn't work. And here, therefore, is a situation that this was a crisis which could have been handled but the arrogance of power actually, is responsible for where it has come to.
Okay.
And I fully
Professor
agree
Ayanjit
that
Sen,
when
Bangladesh really was seen in India and internationally as a rising economic star. And I want to just rattle off some statistics for our viewers. The company transitioned from struggling to feed its population to becoming a net food exporter, experiencing substantial GDP growth from 71 billion in 2006 to 460 billion in 2022. It became the second largest South Asian economy after India. 98% of girls receiving primary education, emerged as a tech manufacturing hub with giants like Samsung wanting to move supply chains there, became a textile export hub. Per capita income tripled in the last decade as per World Bank estimates. 25 million people were lifted out of poverty. So Bangladesh was really seen as an economic success story. So how is it that on the surface you have this projection of economic success, and yet within lies so much turmoil?
Well, I think first of all, I would like to say that what the Sheikh Hasina during her power said that they would build a smart Bangladesh by 2041. Now, that is something which they were treading on. But as time went on, and especially after this incident which has taken place, the economy is definitely going to take a backseat, especially to do with not just bilateral but multilateral economy, which they are doing business outside the country as well as within the country. Because in the last few days, whatever has happened, it has definitely caused a pause in the business operations in Bangladesh as well. And of course, with the companies who have invested in Bangladesh from outside countries, they are also, in a way, a bit jazzed as to what is in store for them as time rolls on. And that's something which even India has to look out for, because we have a lot of investments made in Bangladesh.
Veena Sikri has been our High Commissioner to Bangladesh. We've got Rajiv Dogra, Ambassador, with us as well. Veena Sikri, what's the role potentially of foreign forces in this? There's a lot of talk about Pakistan's ISI having a potential role. How true are these reports that this is done by forces that didn't like the Sheikh Hasina government, were inimical to India's interests, and they were behind the scenes trying to foment trouble on the streets in Bangladesh?
Yeah, I'd like to point out 2 points to what you said. First of all, I've heard very carefully what our friends, Ambassador Humayun Kabir and other colleagues have said. I think for the longest of time, former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina and the students were on the same page, right till I think the Supreme Court judgment came. I think what has happened is that the whole movement was taken over by other people. And this is the question that you have correctly asked. Who were these other people? Because I don't think it is the students who are today vandalizing the statue of Father of the Nation, Sheikh Mujib. It is not the students who are burning Dhanmondi 32, the home where Sheikh Mujib was assassinated. Who are these people? And I think...
Who are these people? You've been there, you know the area. What's your best sense?
I'm linking this up to the fact that Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's visit to China, which took place just in the week before all these troubles started, was a visit which went very badly. And why would China do that? I think that the Chinese probably were getting ready for this or knew it was going to happen. Otherwise, it is very uncharacteristic for China to invite a head of government like Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, with whom they have professed for the many, many years the greatest friendship and identity.
Why would China want Sheikh Hasina gone? Because Sheikh Hasina was playing a double diplomatic game of sorts, trying to keep India and China both on board.
Well, yes, the balancing was there, but I think there was a crack which emerged in the past few weeks where they determined that now we will not be able to get what we want with her. I think.
What did they want?
Otherwise, why?
What did Beijing want, which Hasina wasn't willing to give?
Well, for example, she insisted on coming to India before going to China, number one. Number two, on Teesta project, she said that she would, prefer to give it to India because it's a shared river. And we know that China was putting a lot of pressure. But I'm saying all in all, whatever you may say, for China to treat former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina like this was totally uncharacteristic, and she had to leave Beijing a day earlier, a forecast, a premonition of things to come. Now today, other people who are doing all this, they are not the students. It seems to be another force that is on the...
Which force is this? What is it that you seem to know but aren't willing to say?
Well, maybe it's the Jamaat-e-Islami people who are there because they're burning Hindu homes as well. And that's the first thing that's happened on the ground in Dhaka.
As you say that, Humayun Kabir wants to disagree. So, Ambassador Dogra, give me a moment, I'm coming to you. But Ambassador Kabir wants to disagree because there seems to be some kind of a Jamaat-e-Islami link.
But he can't disagree.
And how are you looking at what Veena Sikri is saying? Do you agree, disagree about China's role?
Well, Veena is a good friend of mine, so I didn't want to disagree, but let me put the perspective, put the whole thing into perspective. Every student, primary school student, secondary school student, university students, college students, every student throughout the country came out. So what Veena is saying, then when the students came, their parents followed them. The society, the whole community followed them. So this one has to understand the dynamic here. And what Veena is saying today as a demonstration of or an example, this movement day before yesterday, it took the revolution, or you can say a mass uprising character. Today, I mean, I can tell you, I've been following this and that's whatever exposure I had. It was a completely student-led movement. The BNP from the sideline, they initially said that we will have moral support. 2 days back, Mirza Fakhrul, who is the General Secretary, said that now our workers can get themselves associated. But to be honest, today, I mean, the whole population of Dhaka or the whole country.
Rajiv Dogra, what's your sense? Was this internal
it is not one, but then let me tell
Was this entirely internal, student-led, as Humayun Kabir seems to suggest, or are you seeing some kind of an external Pakistan-China hand in the mess that Sheikh Hasina found herself in?
Well, Rahul, you guessed what I was going to say, so let me elaborate. I have studied students' protests for my book coming out next week, Autocrats. And students' protests need to be guided, they need to be led, and they need to be programmed to reach a certain destination. Student protests by themselves, like 1968 protests in France and so on, do not lead to a definite result. They peter out over a course of time, as the protests in Bangladesh had nearly petered out a couple of weeks back. But the mistake that Sheikh Hasina did, and I am sorry to be candid about it, is that she had got out of touch with reality. And as one of your Bangladeshi guests had described her, she had become dictatorial. I won't go as far as that, but if you read international commentary over the last 2 years, every single one of them had called her autocratic or authoritarian. The other thing, there were huge doubts about the elections and their fairness which were conducted recently. The third thing was that economy, after going up, had started going down and unemployment was increasing. So was the poverty in section. There are reports that 33 million people in Bangladesh were poor, who could not afford the next meal. So Sheikh Hasina had opened up all fronts possible and had no feedback system worth its name except her cronies. The worst mistake was taking on the army. In the past few months, she had taken on the army, which was up against her, and somehow it was controlled. Now she had appointed an army chief 1.5 months back, who was her relative through his wife, and yet he gave her just 45 minutes notice to quit and leave.
Why do you think he did that? If he's related, if he's just been sworn in, because he was actually appointed on the 23rd of June for a period of 3 years. So General Waqaruzzaman has just been appointed after these protests broke, and yet he seems to have turned on Sheikh Hasina.
Well, as they say, blood is not always as thick as it sounds.
Okay, Veena Sikri, what happens next? What's India's position? What do you think Ajit Doval is telling Sheikh Hasina at this moment?
I think let's be very clear. India wants stability, India wants democracy, and India wants continued development in Bangladesh. These are our prime objectives. And this is an internal matter of Bangladesh. We've said so many, many times in the previous weeks. We are, of course, watching very carefully. We are very careful that the effect of this instability should not spill over onto regions in India, since that is a very strong possibility.
Where can it spill over? Where can this instability spill over, you think?
No, because of the border regions, whether it is the northeast states, whether it is in West Bengal, whether it is in other areas, Assam and Meghalaya, the possibility of this event spilling over, the people who are being, the people who feel they're under siege or trying to come over, we've already had a statement even by some of our political people on this. So I think this is a very real concern for India. We don't want an unstable Bangladesh.
How bad are our relations with the Jamaat-e-Islami or the BNP? Because the Awami League was in India favorite, or we liked them, they liked us. It was a good equation.
We don't play favorites. We don't play favorites. We play for mutual interests, for mutual respect, and mutual growth and development. This is how we've always worked with leaders in other countries, especially in our neighborhood. Why should we play favorites? If there's an election and if the BNP does not want to take part, can India do anything to make the BNP take part? It is the BNP who decided not to take part, and then to say it's a non-participatory election. I think it's not anybody in India who would have said that BNP should take part or should not take part. It was their decision. So I am saying that we are going to live with what is happening with the neighboring countries. But if the instability in that country is going to spill over, and I'd like to say very clearly to Ambassador Humayun Kabir that yes, it was a students' protest, but as long as it remained a student protest, the Prime Minister and the students looked to be more or less on the same page. But when there was a clash between the Chhatra League, the Shibir, and the BNP Jati Dal, then of course it completely morphed into something else. It was no longer
Shafkat, Rabi, what's happening at the moment on the ground? What reports are you picking up from different parts of Bangladesh? Has peace now been restored, or are the streets still restive?
Yeah, so I would add something before I get there. If you look at the sheer number of female participation in the crowd, if you look at the TikTok influencers, the Snapchat influencers, ladies, girls of like 15, 20 years old, Jamaat Islami does not have this many women, first of all. They do not have this many female participants to storm the streets for democracy. It was not an Islamic revolution in Bangladesh. It was a very broad-based revolution where the city-dwelling kids went after the only regime they have seen in their life, which was Sheikh Hasina's regime. Regarding your question, like what comes next, I would say the streets are expected to get calmer within few days. There is going to be a national reconciliation at some point, and if they elect or sort of select better quality advisors, I think things will calm down very quickly. And the conveners of this movement are very smart. They are very young. They are already calling out for not doing anything against the Hindus and the Christians. I have seen many communication from the groups that are coordinating this movement. They are sending out messages to protect mandirs and churches. So I expect not too many incidences around that as well.
Ayanjit Sen, similar scenes were last seen in Sri Lanka, just showing how volatile India's neighborhood is. Now in Bangladesh, and Pakistan is seen as a basket case, but Bangladesh was really seen as an economy and as a country that was on the right path of development. From there, the whole Bangladesh story has unraveled really quickly. What does this mean in the larger, if you were to zoom out and go for a helicopter shot, what does this mean for the politics of South Asia?
Well, I think, first of all, the example that we saw, as you mentioned, Drew, with Sri Lanka. And now if we take it from a wider angle, I would like to say here that, presumably India has always kind of lived with this kind of a neighborhood in a way whereby Pakistan has always been like that, and there is a role of Pakistan even in this, but in an indirect manner though. But from from a broader perspective, I would like to say here that India right now the most important aspect is to have some kind of good governance going on in the neighboring countries. And that's what is currently Sri Lanka is slowly on its way. But Bangladesh again has fallen apart because we were all thinking that Bangladesh is going very good in terms of moving ahead, not just with ties in India, but of course developing its own country very well. But things have just
Shubir
moved
Bhaumik, what
apart.
are the lessons for a country like India from what's happened first in Sri Lanka, from what's been happening in Pakistan and now in Bangladesh? What's the lesson you think for Indian policy and Indian politics?
The crucial thing is don't lose your mass connect. Awami League was the most formidable mass-based party, but over a period of time and a longer tenure in power, 15 years in power, what happened to them is what happened to CPM in West Bengal in 30 years. That has happened to the Awami League in 15 years. The arrogance of power has gone to their head. And very importantly, nobody points this out. From a middle class led leadership which the Awami League had, professors, teachers, respected people. It has become a party of businessmen. It has become a party of cronies. People like Salman Rahman, they ruled the roost. They're the crooks. They have run away the leading bank defaulters and they are close to Sheikh Hasina. So what is the message Sheikh Hasina sent out to people? That he has got rid of the traditional Awami Leaguers who actually explain the strong mass connect that Awami League has. I've seen Awami League since 1980. And they had that kind of mass connect. Today they do they have this kind of leadership? It's all gone.
Humayun Kabir,
worst sufferer of lack of democracy, please let me finish.
Sheikh Hasina projected an image of a reformist Prime Minister who was helping the Bangladesh economy grow fast, and within you had this economic and social turmoil that was building. Do you think this is just the arrogance of power? Where did she get her card so wrong? When it came to rigging the elections or not giving a fair opportunity to her opposition, was that really a big mistake? Because if it was a fairer election, then maybe there wouldn't have been reason for there to be so much anger.
Well, thank you. I was a freedom fighter in 1971, trained in India. So let me tell you or give you a background. We were fighting our liberation war basically on three things. One was to restore our democratic rights. Second was we were discriminated economically, so we wanted to have a Bangladesh which would be non-discriminatory. And third, we were not getting justice, so we wanted social justice. These were the three dreams that we had. But I can only tell you that over the years, and particularly during the last 15, 20 years, we have lost our democracy. We have become a discriminated society. There are two Bangladeshs now. One Bangladesh is growing richer in the fastest rate in the world. And on the other hand, as Professor has mentioned, people are now suffering because of the inflation, the other kinds of problem. Life has become very difficult for them. And third thing, arrogance of power has been so much that injustice, people didn't get justice. And you can see today, the people, there was nowhere to go. People couldn't go anywhere. So there was a sense of non-availability of justice, if I may put it. So if that kind of situation develops in a society, it betrays its basic values for which we fought our liberation war in 1971. If you follow that line or follow that kind of policy line, then the younger generation, they are asking for this exactly. And I can tell you, if you listen to them, they are saying we are against discrimination. And their movement was subsequently, or at a later stage, movement's name was changed into anti-discrimination movement. The second, they are saying that we want democracy in the country. Third, they say we want justice. So you can see that this is the new generation. And let me tell you one word on this is a leaderless movement. I can tell you this is a new experiment we have seen. There were 65 or 64 coordinators. There was no one leader here. All the student leaders were separate and they were absolutely away from the political leadership. The political leadership had to race to catch them. And they had to join them.
Rajiv Dogra, it's happened in the Middle East. It happened in countries like Egypt. It's happened now in Bangladesh. What do you think is the lesson for Indian politics and for our netas?
Yes, it could be a lesson for the whole of South Asia. Why do we forget the famous Gokhale word that what Bengal thinks tomorrow, the whole of India thinks tomorrow, today?
Mr. Dogra, what's the lesson for India, you think?
What?
Well, I think I'll stay out of the internal politics or internal dynamics of it. But the lesson for India is that we already have a difficult neighbor to our west. We have an uncertain situation in the north. And now, with the new change in Bangladesh, we have to be very careful that it does not become a strategic issue for us. The other thing is the refugee inflows, which could be a security volatility in northeast, and that is a very sensitive.
Are you
region,
expecting lots of
not
refugees
just for the,
as a result of this?
well, certainly, Rahul, if Rohingyas could come despite all our security measures, and they could come in large numbers and settle in, from UP to deep south. Bangladeshis come in on a regular basis.
Okay.
You see them everywhere in
Veena
Delhi
Sikri,
also.
at this moment
And
there's a
they
meeting at the
come
Prime
in,
Minister's
register
residence, the
themselves.
External Affairs Minister is there, the Finance Minister is there. What are India's options? What should and what could India be doing at a moment like this?
Well, I think India would be in touch with the Chief of Army Staff of Bangladesh because to know what is going on, and he's obviously in control, he's leading the situation, and the urging for stability. This is a very important point. And you're saying that this is a student-led movement, and look at the visuals you're showing. They don't show that they are students at all. And I think that to say that it is the students who are doing this, this is a completely different visual that is coming on your screen from saying that these are young students or leaderless groups. It was like that. It was like that, but it morphed. In that third week of July, this completely morphed into something else. And that is what we are seeing the result of today. Now, who could have foreseen or who should have done what? There's a lot of, analysis that we done now, but we are getting the reports straight from Bangladesh about homes burning, the minorities, communities under great trouble. Those visuals are also coming to us. So I think the situation is, so you're seeing these women are being beaten up in the visuals you're showing. So, who do you think? Do you think the students are beating up other students? I don't know. I think that there's a lot of detailed examination and introspection to be done by all of us. India has to introspect, Bangladesh has to introspect, the eminent people on this panel have to introspect on how did this go so wrong? You just saw somebody beating up a group of, why is all this happening? I think it has to come under control. There's need for stability. There's need for restoring. All the factories had reopened and they were working. Now, all the businessmen, their orders are pending. They have to send their ready-made garments to the West, to other countries. And if you're going to close the factories down again, you have a huge economic impact of that to recover.
We'll keep tracking the story very, very closely for your insights, your perspectives, the depth and width of what you've said, and the analysis you've been able to bring out for our viewers. Thank you very much. I want to thank our guests for joining us.